In Martin Scorsese's Casino, there is a scene where Robert De Niro, playing Sam Ace Rothstein, inspects blueberry muffins in the Tangiers casino kitchen. He counts the berries, 10 per muffin, exactly. No more, no less. The camera follows him across the casino floor as he fine-tunes slot machines, watches dealers through surveillance cameras, and calculates odds in his head. These scenes, repeated throughout the 3-hour film, paint a picture of a gambling genius who built a Las Vegas empire through sheer perfectionism. The problem is that empire did not exist the way the movie shows it. Frank "Lefty" Rosenthal told PBS in 1995 that he ran the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, and the Marina simultaneously. 4 casinos, not one. 4 separate properties, 4 skimming operations, all controlled by the Chicago outfit, an organization whose name never once appears in Scorsese's film. Rosenthal was not the sympathetic outsider De Niro portrays, and he did not fall because his wife betrayed him with his best friend. The real story involves legal maneuvering, massive criminal operations, and a system designed to steal millions from working people's pension funds. What Scorsese and screenwriter Nicholas Pileggi changed tells us everything about what Hollywood needs from true crime stories, and what gets left out when studios are terrified of lawsuits. Frank Rosenthal grew up betting on sports, sitting in the bleachers at Wrigley Field. He skipped school to watch Chicago games and learned odds from his father, who owned racehorses. By the 1950s, he was running illegal bookmaking operations for the Chicago outfit, earning a reputation as someone who could calculate odds faster than anyone. The Mob Museum notes he became known as one of the greatest handicappers in the country. When the FBI started closing in on his Chicago operations, he moved to Miami in the early 1960s, where federal investigators documented him working with prominent outfit members. A criminal court deposition from 1982 in Miami shows Rosenthal hired a former CIA demolitions expert to blow up rival bookies' property, to establish his authority, and to impress New York crime families. This was not some honest gambler trying to make a living. When Rosenthal moved to Las Vegas in 1968, the Chicago outfit already had plans for him. Nicholas Pileggi spent months interviewing Rosenthal for the book that became Casino. He described Rosenthal's personality in terms that do not match De Niro's performance at all. Pileggi said Rosenthal was a loner, that he only rooted for the odds, that he could not root for anybody, and that it kept him distant. People who knew Rosenthal described someone who calculated every relationship like a bet, who never showed real affection, and who viewed human interactions as transactions with expected returns. In 1976, when the Nevada Gaming Commission held hearings about whether Rosenthal could get a casino license, investigators presented evidence of his criminal record, his history of illegal bookmaking, and his connections to organized crime figures. The commission, which included future Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid, denied him. Rosenthal did not argue. He simply changed his job title to entertainment director, and he kept running the casinos anyway. That is not perfectionism. That is contempt for the law. But Casino opens with De Niro's voice explaining how Ace started as a handicapper, made a name for himself through talent, earned the respect of unnamed mob bosses through skill alone. The film shows Ace as self-made, brilliant, meticulous. Scorsese's camera work makes the Tangiers look like Ace's kingdom, his domain, built by his genius. Except it's all backward. Rosenthal didn't build anything. He was sent to manage what the Chicago outfit bought with stolen money. Here's what really happened. In 1974, a Vietnam veteran and lawyer named Allen Glick used $62.7 million borrowed from the Teamsters pension fund to buy the Argent Corporation, which owned 4 Las Vegas casinos, the Stardust, the Fremont, the Hacienda, and the Marina. The Teamsters pension fund was controlled by mob-connected union officials. Glick thought he was making a legitimate business investment. He did not understand he was fronting for Milwaukee and Kansas City mob bosses. The Chicago outfit appointed Frank Rosenthal to run the casinos and coordinate the Skim. Every month, couriers carried millions of dollars in cash from Las Vegas, counting rooms to Kansas City and Chicago before that money was recorded for tax purposes. FBI surveillance documents from the late 1970s detail the whole operation. Frank Collada, who later became an FBI informant, estimated they were skimming $1 million a month just from slot machines, plus $75,000 from table games. Rosenthal coordinated all of it while publicly working as an entertainment director, hosting a weekly TV talk show from the Stardust, where he interviewed Frank Sinatra and O.J. Simpson. The movie changes everything. Casino shows Ace running one casino, the Tangiers. That's it. Philip Green, played by Kevin Pollak, appears as an incompetent frontman who signs whatever Ace tells him to sign. Green fumbles through meetings, depends entirely on Ace's expertise, and eventually cooperates with the FBI because he is weak. This character assassination of Allen Glick serves a specific purpose. By making the frontman look stupid, the film makes Ace look brilliant. Audiences believe the Tangiers succeeded because of Ace's genius, not because the Chicago outfit was stealing money that belonged to truck drivers' retirement funds. Pileggi himself told interviewers that Glick was basically a legitimate businessman needed by the mob to operate. When FBI agents convinced Glick he was fronting a criminal enterprise, he cooperated. His testimony in 1985 and 1986 helped convict multiple mob bosses. The real Allen Glick showed courage. Casino's Philip Green is a joke. Scorsese and Pileggi had to compress 4 casinos into one, because showing Rosenthal managing multiple properties simultaneously would have been narratively confusing and legally dangerous. Universal Pictures lawyers were terrified. Looper reported that because Pileggi's book had not been fully fact-checked before filming started, the studio insisted the movie be called Adapted from a True Story instead of Based on a True Story. They changed every name. They refused to let them identify the Chicago outfit by name. The organization that controlled Las Vegas gambling in the 1970s appears in the film as faceless back-home bosses whose names and locations remain vague. This was not an artistic choice. It was a legal necessity. But it transformed the story from a systemic critique of organized crime into a character study about a brilliant man undone by personal relationships. The Nevada Gaming Commission hearing scene in the film Casino shows Ace facing corrupt bureaucrats who resent his success. The commissioners, especially Pat Webb, appear petty and vindictive. Ace delivers an impassioned defense of his record, arguing his only crime was being good at gambling. The scene plays as moral vindication, and audiences leave thinking he was unfairly targeted. But Las Vegas Sun coverage of the real 1976 hearing tells a different story. Commission members presented specific evidence. They cited arrests, bookmaking operations, attempts to bribe college athletes to fix games, and associations with known crime figures. Jeff Silver questioned Frank Rosenthal about his history with Joey Aiuppa and Tony Spilotro. Rosenthal grew angry, accused Silver of badgering him, and said Silver spoke with a forked tongue. He lost his temper. The commission voted 5-0 to deny him a license, not because the commissioners were jealous, but because he had a criminal record and was running casinos illegally. Hollywood turned regulatory enforcement into persecution because audiences need someone to root for, and Martin Scorsese needed viewers to sympathize with Ace. The film's depiction of Rosenthal's personality is equally distorted. Casino shows Ace as a man who cares deeply about quality, fairness, and proper management. He fires people for incompetence and insists on standards. The Blueberry Muffin scene is meant to show dedication to excellence. People who actually worked with Rosenthal described something else. FBI wiretaps captured him discussing casino operations with Chicago bosses in coded language. When Kansas City mob boss Nick Savella ordered him to hire specific people, Rosenthal complied immediately. He knew refusing could mean death. Pileggi explained that you could not go to the mob and say you wanted to quit. Former associates described Rosenthal as calculating, emotionally detached, and someone who never trusted anyone. Shirley Brancucci, who was the first female baccarat dealer on the Strip and who worked at the Stardust, remembered him as commanding and having a big ego. That was not perfectionism. That was control. Now we need to talk about Tony Spilotro and Geri Rosenthal, because this is where Casino becomes a different kind of story. Tony Spilotro, nicknamed the Ant, and Frank Rosenthal knew each other from Chicago. Multiple sources confirmed they were boyhood friends. The Mob Museum states Rosenthal was denied a gaming license, particularly because of his boyhood friendship with Anthony Spilotro. Wikipedia records that the Nevada Gaming Commission cited their boyhood friendship as evidence of Rosenthal's organized crime connections. They grew up in the same Chicago neighborhoods, and both worked for the outfit before Las Vegas. In 1971, the Chicago outfit sent Spilotro to Vegas to protect their interests, which meant keeping an eye on Rosenthal and the Skim. So the movie's depiction of Ace and Nikki as childhood friends is accurate. What the movie exaggerates is everything else about their relationship. Spilotro did have an affair with Rosenthal's wife, Geri McGee. That is documented. Nicholas Calabrese testified in 2007 at a federal trial that Spilotro was targeted for murder partly because of that affair. Frank Colata, Spilotro's right-hand man, later described going to Chicago and hearing mob bosses ask what he was doing, and the bosses were furious. The affair was real, and the bosses were furious. But Casino turns that episode into the central drama of the entire film. Sharon Stone's performance as Ginger dominates the second half. We watch her character descend into drug addiction, steal from Ace, and wave a gun in a driveway. The love triangle between Ace, Ginger, and Nikki becomes the reason everything falls apart, according to the movie. That is drama. Not always the full truth. The truth is more complicated and less dramatic. Geri McGee Rosenthal struggled with alcohol and drug addiction. Her marriage to Frank was troubled long before Spilotro arrived. They fought constantly. Frank hired private detectives to follow her. She would leave Las Vegas with their children and go to Los Angeles for days. Their relationship was violent on both sides. The marriage officially ended in divorce in 1981. On October 4th, 1982, someone planted a bomb under Rosenthal's Cadillac outside Tony Roma's restaurant. Journalist Myron Borders heard Rosenthal emerge from the burning car shouting, "They're trying to kill me." He survived because General Motors had installed a metal stabilizing plate under the driver's seat to fix a balancing problem in that model. When investigators asked who tried to kill him, Rosenthal refused to say. A month later, on November 9th, 1982, Geri McGee died in a Los Angeles motel from an overdose of cocaine, Valium, and whiskey. The coroner ruled it accidental. She was 46 years old. Casino opens with the car bombing, using it as a narrative hook, framing Ace as someone targeted because he was too good at his job. The film never identifies who ordered the hit. It maintains mystery, protects Ace's image, and makes his survival seem like evidence of his intelligence. Rosenthal himself never publicly identified who tried to kill him, but FBI reports suggest Chicago outfit bosses blamed him for bringing law enforcement attention to the skimming operations. Some suspected Tony Spilotro. Others pointed to Milwaukee mob boss Frank Balistrieri, who was heard on wiretaps threatening to get full satisfaction for Rosenthal's perceived wrongdoing. The car bombing was not about personal betrayal or Ace being too perfect. It was about a criminal organization cleaning house. The film ends with Ace alone, watching horse races through binoculars in San Diego. He narrates that Las Vegas lost something when corporations replaced the mob. The final montage shows the Tangiers being demolished and new corporate casinos rising. Ace's closing speech frames mob, controlled Vegas as somehow more authentic than what came after. This ending asks audiences to feel nostalgia for an era when criminals stole pension money and murdered people who got in their way. It asks us to sympathize with Ace as a tragic figure whose talents became obsolete. Frank Rosenthal left Las Vegas after the bombing and moved to Laguna Niguel, California, then to Boca Raton, Florida. Nevada gaming authorities permanently banned him from every casino in the state. He did not retire quietly. He continued sports handicapping, ran offshore betting websites, and consulted for gambling operations. He died in Miami Beach in 2008 at age 79, having never faced prosecution for his role in the skimming operation. Gaming historian Jeff Schumacher noted diplomatically that Rosenthal lived his life under his own terms. That is one way to describe someone who stole millions, avoided justice, and died comfortable. Rosenthal himself criticized the film Casino for downplaying his achievements. He told journalists the film exaggerated his personal problems and simplified his relationship with Geri. Even the man Hollywood made sympathetic thought they got it wrong. The myth that Casino created persists because it fits what audiences want from true crime stories. We want the lone genius, the brilliant outsider whose downfall comes from trusting the wrong people. We want tragedy, not systemic corruption. Scorsese's visual style reinforces this. His camera makes the Tangiers look like a kingdom, and Ace seem in control of his destiny. But Rosenthal was not in control. He was appointed by the Chicago outfit to manage stolen Teamsters money. He worked within a massive criminal conspiracy involving unions, legitimate businesses, and multiple organized crime families. He avoided prosecution through silence and legal maneuvering, not innocence. What gets lost in Hollywood's version is the structural nature of organized crime's control over Las Vegas. The Chicago outfit did not need brilliant individuals. They needed competent operators who followed orders and maintained plausible deniability. The Teamsters pension fund, controlled by mob-connected officials, provided the real power behind Vegas expansion in the 1970s. Legitimate businesses, politicians, and union leaders all participated in or enabled operations that stole millions from working people's retirement savings. By compressing 4 casinos into one, erasing the Chicago outfit's name, and softening Rosenthal's criminality, Scorsese and Pileggi turned systemic corruption into a story about personal ambition and betrayal. Scorsese said in DVD commentary that he saw Casino as a metaphor for Hollywood itself, a place where there is never enough and where excess inevitably leads to collapse. That metaphor requires Ace to be a tragic figure whose paradise is lost, not a criminal whose illegal operations were shut down by federal investigations. It requires Ginger to be a destructive force, not a troubled woman who married into organized crime. It requires Nikki to be a violent friend who betrayed Ace, not an enforcer sent by the Chicago outfit to protect their investment. Today, when people talk about Casino as history, they repeat the myth that Sam Rothstein was a genius undone by love and loyalty. The truth is that Frank Rosenthal was a Chicago outfit operative who ran 4 casinos simultaneously, coordinated massive theft from pension funds, avoided prosecution, and lived comfortably until he died. But that story does not work for Hollywood. Universal's lawyers demanded name changes to avoid lawsuits. Scorsese needed audiences to sympathize with someone. Pileggi needed to compress a decade of complex criminal operations into 3 hours. The system needed a sympathetic gambler running one fictional casino so the film could deliver emotional satisfaction without incurring legal liability. The cost of that choice is that millions of people misunderstand how organized crime actually controlled Las Vegas. They believe brilliant individuals built empires through skill, when the truth involved stolen pension money, political corruption, and violence. They sympathize with Ace Rothstein as a victim, when Frank Rosenthal was a willing participant who escaped justice. They think one man's perfectionism defined an era when 4 properties, simultaneously stealing millions for Chicago mob bosses, represented the actual scope of corruption. The film's legal constraints meant the Chicago outfit could never be named. Living associates had to be protected, and the scale of operations had to be minimized. Those constraints transformed a story about systemic organized crime into a character study about a gambler who loved the wrong woman and trusted the wrong friend. That transformation is exactly why Frank Lefty Rosenthal, a mob operative, became known in the film as Sam Ace Rothstein, a tragic hero.